Hi, very good morning to you. It's Gene from maverickstar Observatory. Guys, first of all, before we get into having a look at some of these shocking statistics that were live here in the UK, and by the way, if you think that this is just related to, the UK, then think again, because this is related to any other country. It's just being used as an example because, most of the Western countries are trying to reduce CO2 by 2030 to net zero, right? And I just want to say before we get into it, a huge thanks for just a few people that are supporting what we're doing here. We're trying to give people a heads up of some of the things that they may experience in the coming months, and maybe a little bit longer, let's say a year. But with information, you can act on that if it's good, solid, sound information. If it's a load of rubbish, then you're not going to benefit from that at all. But what I would like to think is that I've built a reputation over the last few years on YouTube, where some of the things that I've brought to your attention are very credible, and it's easy to make future predictions on those things, especially when the trend isn't changing. So by looking at some of these things over a long period of time, you get to know what really is the deal. So huge thanks to those people that support us firstly on Patreon. Huge thanks for those people that chip in a few bucks here and there on the PayPal link down in the description. And also a huge thanks for those people that are prepared to take some of our equipment on in other countries and relay that information back here to us in the United Kingdom, so that we can process it and keep our website updated. That covers a hell of a lot of things. If you've not been over to poleshiftnews.com, take a look. We cover earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, we cover the Schumann frequency for those people that are interested in that, because a lot of people now are saying that the Schumann frequency affects their mood and their well-being. And it's no coincidence for those people that have brought this to my attention. They've actually said we follow the Schumann frequency on a weekly basis, even a daily basis in some counts, and when the frequency changes, so does their mood. And I just wonder whether that is across the animal kingdom as a whole. But really what I wanted to talk about today with you guys is this net zero by 2030. So we're 8 years away, and look at this appalling state of renewables. At the moment, we're producing 63.8% of our energy demand by fossil fuels and only 6.3% by renewables. You can see there in the description on the table that renewables covers solar power, wind power and hydroelectric, and they're doing miserable today. Obviously this was taken at 9:45. I doubt it'll improve much by this afternoon. That's just your luck with renewables. If the sun's not shining, you've got no wind, then the majority of your power from renewables isn't being generated, and it has to come from somewhere else. And you can see there that we're using 22.9 we've got 61% of natural gas producing our demands at the moment. Now, we've spent, I want to put this into perspective just briefly, we've spent trillions already, and we're nowhere near, as you can see, in a position to meet that goal by 2030 of being carbon net zero. And I wanted to show you, just this here, of what they're saying now by the National Grid. The burning of coal, gas and biomass produces carbon dioxide. The increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide from around 280 parts per million before the Industrial Revolution, which, remember, the Industrial Revolution began in 1760. I've showed you this on charts before, and they completely admit, obviously, the other cold periods before that as well, but they're saying from at least the Industrial Revolution, which is 1760, it's gone up to now 400 parts per million. I've measured carbon dioxide here, as you know, at the observatory, in the ranges of almost 500 parts per million on some days. But what I will say is, if you go over to Pole Shift News, have a look at Earth at a glance, and just go back in the archive over the last 12 months, you'll see that CO2 is actually reducing. Now, this information comes from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, is the acronym, isn't it? And they've been tracking it since 1958. Most of this is coming from that observatory in Hawaii, and I doubt that is the single best place to measure CO2 at. I think if you measure it at any particular part of the Earth, at any given location and time, you'll see that over time the observations will show, as what we have now found out here at the observatory, that CO2 is dropping. But this isn't going to stop these companies, even though they've spent trillions in this industry, even though our electricity bills have gone up threefold in the UK alone, and I know it's the same globally. This is not achievable by 2030. And if we've spent trillions to this point in time to only get 6.3%, what is going to be the actual costs by 2030? Because we've got to make up 90-something% to get to net zero. You think about that. If our energy bills have gone up already 3 times, how much more are they going to go up when we need to invest another 90% to get this anywhere near a position of where it can maintain producing electricity by just using renewables? And there's something else we need to factor into this as well, and we shouldn't forget that, is that these renewables need maintenance and replacements, as we've already seen. When things go wrong with these wind turbines, they literally become self-destructive. And not only that, we're already putting some of these toxic materials that we've built these turbines with that have already come to their end of life cycle, and of course that goes into landfill, and we know that ends up in turn causing environmental problems with contamination. So the big problem is that we've got do-gooders in this world, mainly the politicians. It's mainly coming from these politicians that say, what we really need to do is reduce the population of human beings down to 500 million. And of course, all of us know that means that 7.5 billion of us have got to go. Now, I'm just going to say something. You know as well as I know what's causing these excess deaths that we've been monitoring. You know exactly what is causing that. And this is not good, because we've got a death rate at the moment now of over 1,500 people alone in the UK that are dying at a higher rate than what there was at the peak of the pandemic. I'm sure you've, on the grapevine, heard what China's doing right now at the moment with those camps they're building with a capacity to hold 90,000, but we also know that could be stretched up to 200,000. And these are popping up all around China, which is causing alarmism for a lot of people. Because if China financially goes bankrupt soon, which is not far off already doing so, the whole country is going to plummet into turmoil. And that is a very, very big population. But I will say this, it will have devastating effects globally on the economic global system that we've got established right now. We seem to be making some horrible mistakes, and it's these people that are running the countries, just a small handful of them, that are failing repeatedly. If they wanted to do something about this high inflation that we've got right now, and they wanted to do something about not having to put up interest rates, then the time to do that, can I say, was 10 years ago. It's through not just failing to invest in new businesses here in the UK, it's failing to invest in new businesses globally. And when you don't manufacture anything, all is your business basic model is on a service, then you're not actually producing anything other than your time in which it takes you to do those services. And that's why China over the last 10-15 years has become such a major powerhouse globally. But that looks like things are about to change in that country. So, I'd just like to bring some of these things to your attention, as well as the main topics that we talk about, which is obviously the magnetic pole reversal, because I think it's, greatly important that when people look at things like this, what we're looking at here, and they see the common sense in the fact that we've already invested trillions and trillions, and the best we've been able to do is 6.3%, then we know the time frame of the next 8 years is just going to lead to another failure, and a colossal amount of more money invested in something which is not going to produce what it was set up to do, or expected to do at least. Now, there is obviously a global effort to whack up all our energy bills, but what this is doing in turn is having a detrimental effect on every other industry, because when you put up industry energy costs, and that industry manufactures something, you put up the manufacturing costs for that company, and there is a knock-on effect by the time it comes down to the individual, you and me, consumers. So, there are some very hard times ahead of us for all of us, and it looks like they're going to be unavoidable, and that is why, for another reason, I say, make sure you have at least, guys, at least if you've not done this, at least 2 weeks to 1 month's worth of food, and put yourself out of your selection of whatever tools you have around the house, something that could help you chop up some wood, light a fire, simple things like that. You don't need to spend a fortune, but it is the cheapest insurance policy that will look after you and your loved ones, your family members, if that time ever comes. And we've had subscribers on this channel that were caught up in the floods in Europe, caught up in the floods in Afghanistan, and all the other places around the world, when we see these major climatic events unfold. Mudslides that wash away houses, riverbanks that burst and wash away houses, literally tearing people's houses down and displacing, not like we've seen 20 years ago or 15 years ago in the thousands. We're now seeing the displacements in the millions. This is really happening, and it's not just caused by one problem, as I've talked about many times on this channel when I've mentioned the gauntlet and all the obstacles, because right at this point in time we're travelling through that gauntlet, hitting one thing after the next now, and the reason for that is because we've had to increase the speed at which we move through this gauntlet, and by doing so, accidents are starting to happen and unfold. We predicted this 7 years ago. So, if you haven't got a few things put away from for your family, then really it's just about your time you invest in either going to the shop, buying, even if it's just rice, some staples, stuff that it's got a long shelf life, like pasta, things like that, because it's better to eat pasta or some rice when you've got no food at all to eat, even though it's a bit of a bland meal, but it's a staple. Remember, people live on these things, and only those things, around the world. And we're a little bit spoiled here in the West, thinking that this will never happen, and that's the common attitude of a lot of people. They believe that this will never happen, never will affect them. But the fact is, it already is for a lot of people now. So guys, I've got in a couple of days I'm going to do an Earth Health at a glance, where we look at some of the anomalies that are taking place around our world, and update the website. I've also got some data from Kendall. I know he sent me recently his muon data and his magnetometer data, so we'll get that up on the website and get the website updated with that information. And guys, if you can, there is a link down there. You know, we try our best to keep you ahead of the curve, ahead of the game, and out of danger. Now, you know, we can talk as much as we want, but it requires a little bit of action. You know, you're probably one of those that are standing, like some of us have been in the past, on the railway track, and I'm not there to, you know, pick you up and put you to the side, say, in safety. That's something you've got to do for you and your loved ones, and I know you know that. So, you know, don't, without any more delay, put these things off that you've got to get, you know, sorted, so that, you know, you have some form of insurance policy. There's a link down there if you want to help support us, or if you want to become one of our patrons. You know, I surely hope you would like to do that. You know, you may have already, and if you have, you may have already had a part in saving somebody's life, their livelihood, or some of their possessions that they own, and that could also be some of their loved ones. So, you know, for that reason, I really would like to hope that and think that you would help support what we do here. Guys, I'll say what I usually do. You know, you look after your loved ones. As always, bye for now. Have a good day.